All right, welcome to today's campaign catch-up. A lot to get to. Joining me today, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody and CBN's John Stolnis, host of the DC Debrief podcast. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Oh, Dan. Great.
You ready? 11 days, gentlemen. 11 days until it all goes down. I'm sure everyone's seeing it in their feeds now, the early voting and everything. Everyone's showing that they voted, and it's happening. It's really going down now. And the big story today, John, I'll start with your reaction, and we'll get David's after that, to the Harris Town Hall on CNN with Anderson Cooper last night. General thoughts on how that went?
Well, first thought is fantastic location, Chester Township in what's called the Sun Center.
No bias there for you.
Literally 5 minutes from my high school, Sun Valley High School in Aston, Pennsylvania. So couldn't have picked a better spot. But that it really is a very purple area, that particular part of suburban southeast Philadelphia. And she was in a room full of so-called the people who stay there undecided, and was taking questions from them with Anderson Cooper. And I think there were some moments where I think she had an answer, but I think we have seen a trend over the last few weeks of this campaign as she's done more interviews and as she's tried to do more extemporaneous speaking. I know, David, you've said that this was going to happen. Dan, I think you've said this was going to happen. And as she did more interviews, we would see this more. She's been certainly less steady on her feet in a lot of these different occasions. And my takeaway from that was she didn't answer a lot of the questions that were placed in front of her. And again, the thing that I still come back to that I can't understand why she won't be able to articulate this properly is specifically what are your weaknesses, or what's something you would have done differently? Like, she's been asked this question 4, 5, 6 times now, and still can't articulate an answer. And I think she, as a politician, is improved from where she was in 2019. But when she was first elevated to the top spot, these were the worries. Like, this is when the 2019 Kamala Harris shows up. And I think we saw some of that in the town hall. Now, from the people in the town hall afterwards who saw her, I think it was kind of a mixed bag. People said that they resonated towards what she had to say with some of the questions, and others did not. So I thought it was an uneven performance from her in that debate, or in that town hall. And I'm not sure that at this stage of the game, where I think the polls kind of are, and it certainly sounds like where the Democratic internal polls are saying, I think she needs to be making gains and not treading water or falling behind. Certainly not falling behind at this stage. So I don't think it landed very well.
Yeah, and just real quick, David, before you respond, one thing to John's point there on just her kind of not really kind of nailing it. Like, it felt like she almost had the tone of, like, I'm at a rally, right? Like, when she got grilled, when Cooper did actually grill her on the border wall stuff, she started going, let's talk about that border wall. And she kind of chuckled and laughed, like as if she was going to get like some big response from the crowd. But this is a town hall where people are looking for policy discussions and things of that nature. They're not there to hoot and holler at whatever you say. So it just seemed like a weird, like she was kind of expecting a sort of a more of a rally type answer. But that's not the tone for that. But that was the sort of thing that just made it feel a little off at times, I think. But David, go ahead, your reaction.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, Dan, on that. And John, I think you gave a fair diplomatic answer. Look, I'll give you a straight up answer. It was disastrous. It was absolutely disastrous. Uneven, as John says, ain't going to do it at this point for Kamala Harris. That's not the trick to winning. There's so much to unpack here. First of all, here's some crutch words to listen for. When Kamala Harris starts to laugh and then she says, let's start with this, that's a deflection. She always says, let's start with this. That means she's going to go back to her talking points and she's not going to give you any policy prescriptions. And the problem, it's really a shame. I mean, if you're a Democrat and you want Kamala Harris to do well, you've got to just be pulling out your hair because she had a huge opportunity here in these last couple months, and she's blown it. She just has, guys. She just has. She has not come up with any meat on the bone. And there's so much to point to in this town hall. First of all, when she was asked specifically by one of the voters, what legislative accomplishment, if you could just pick one that you want to get through Congress, she couldn't even answer that question. She's like, well, there are many. Well, you know what? That's not the question. The question is pick one. And she wouldn't even pick one. Come on, you got to do better than that. Like I don't have a rooting interest either way, but like, I mean, politically from an analysis standpoint, I don't have a rooting interest, but I'm thinking like with a political 101 hat on, you've got to be able to have a better answer than that. You just have to. As to John's point on the mistakes question, you know, you've got to be able to have a better answer than that. I mean, her answer essentially was, I don't really prepare that well for certain briefings, and I probably could prepare better. I mean, that's basically what she was saying. She didn't say it that way, but that's what the takeaway was. And then on immigration, I mean, Anderson Cooper, I mean, this is layup stuff. I mean, let's not give Anderson Cooper all of the applause here for a moment for asking just basic questions like, you talk about this congressional bill all the time that you want to get passed on immigration. Well, there's $650 million in there for a border wall. You've called the border wall stupid. Are you for it? I mean, and it's deer in the headlights. She's got nothing. So you put it all together, and it not only was disastrous, but there's just an inherent problem, I think, underlying all of this, guys. And here's the problem. She's trying to be all things to all people. And that's her main problem. You know, she's not being, look, she's just not leveling with people. She's not telling us who she really is. And she's a progressive liberal from San Francisco. Okay, well, own it then. Yeah. Own it. You know, but she can't own it. She knows she can't own it because she won't get elected that way. So she's trying to appease the left a little bit, appease the center, maybe even play to the center right. And she's ended up becoming a mush full of nothing. And when you're a mush full of nothing, you're not going to win an election that way. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is not only honest, in air quotes, so to speak, but he's sometimes too honest. I mean, he gives you if Kamala Harris could just get 10% of some of Trump's unfilteredness, if you will, let's call it that, she'd be well served, but she won't do it. And because she won't do it, she's going to lose this election.
Well, it's
she's going to lose. I mean, what's today? October 24th?
The 24th. We got 11 days.
Mark it down.
A week
Mark
from
it down,
Tuesday.
Gentlemen. She's going to lose. Because this strategy will not work. It just won't. And you got to be frustrated if you're a Democrat today. Well,
and John, I want to get your reaction to this thought here. When I'm watching it, you know, just stylistically, right? As a politician, everyone knows politicians have prepped, and there's some extent of sort of polish that they're trying to do. And so, like when David's saying she's going to her talking points, well, all these candidates over time, even Trump, they're talking points. They just have different ways of getting to them, right? And and most of them, the ones that rise to the top, are natural. They make it feel natural. Right. And so, like, I think J.D. Vance is doing a really good job of that right now, making it feel natural when he gets to his talking points. And even when you know he's in a talking point, it kind of gets there logically. Right now, when I watch Kamala Harris, John, I feel like you almost can feel her in her mind going, OK, here's the talking point. I have to get to this and I'm going to get it out. And it feels like you're watching her try to execute what they had been talking about in a meeting rather than you're just hearing kind of what this politician thinks. Is that, does anyone else feel the same thing, or is that just me?
No, I agree 100% with that. I think the running mates, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, are both actually able to do a decent job of that. I think that's one of the selling points that brought Walz into the ticket, was his ability to just kind of speak extemporaneously and speak, I think we've said it before, speak MAGA, but in a progressive way to people. And
well, it feels more authentic, right? Like whatever you think about Walz, it just feels like, okay, that's, you know, you feel like he's speaking from the hip a little bit more. Right. It doesn't feel like he's straining to find a talking point.
Right. And so I think the reason Harris's campaign surged so much earlier, and I'm not the first person to say this, I've seen other people say this, was that in the beginning, she and her campaign their effort was to make Trump seem smaller, right? It was to make Trump be weird. You know, he's weird. He's kind of, you know, he's not for you. I mean, it was mostly about elevating her and diminishing Trump. And over the last few weeks, really, the campaign has become more about what's negative about Donald Trump, the threat that she believes and that they believe he poses to democracy, and not so much what it is that she brings to the table, because it really is a fact that most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, have an opinion on Donald Trump, good, bad, or indifferent. People don't know her. They just don't know her. And when she can't come up with answers to questions that by this point in the campaign, she should either have an answer that makes you mad or makes you glad, it makes it seem like she's not being forthright, that she's just not, like you said, leveling with you. And I think at this stage in the game, she would be wise to focus more on what it is that she brings to the table. How am I, Kamala Harris, going to make your lives better in a way that Donald Trump won't? Because I don't think Joe Biden was hammering on that Trump is a danger to democracy. And, for a certain number of voters, that's going to be true no matter what. I don't think you're swaying anyone on that at this point.
Well,
you've got to convince people you're the right person for the job.
Yeah, listen, John, you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you think about it, let's just go back for a second. When Biden was in the race, what was it? It was about threat to democracy. Trump's a threat to democracy. Then Kamala Harris got in the race. And then what did it become? Hope, joy, vibes.
Joy, right. Yeah.
Right. It was all positive. Oh, we're just going to ride this wave out all the way to November. Oh, but now things aren't going so well. So what are we back to? Threat to democracy, the sequel. And here's the problem. The Democrats think, or they hope, that this is going to work. Newsflash, it is not going to work. 2016, Hillary tried it, didn't work. 2024, they're trying it again. They think January 6th and all the lawsuits, and then now this time it'll work. No, it won't. He's more popular than ever from a favorability standpoint. It's not working. Oh, and one last thing, Donald Trump is dressed in Teflon. There's a reason he's called Teflon Don, for a reason. This type of stuff, we are at the throw anything against the wall and see what sticks strategy. That's where the Kamala Harris folks are at right now. The problem is the wall is Donald Trump, and he's made of Teflon, and nothing sticks to Donald Trump. That's just the truth. Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. That's the only way Donald Trump loses, if Donald Trump beats himself. No one else is going to beat Donald Trump other than himself. And right now, Kamala Harris's people are not doing it.
Yeah, and okay, so look, Nate Silver is one of the big analysts out there, pollsters. He comes up with his own models for these elections, looking at all the numbers. He did say that he thought the race, still close, toss up, but they asked him, like, if you had to go with your gut, what would you do? Who would you pick? And he said his gut tells him Trump right now. And it's interesting, guys. I'll just throw out a couple past numbers here, and then we can look into what's happening right now. But in 2016, around this time, with a couple weeks ago, Hillary Clinton was up around 5 points, 5 or 6 points, something along those lines in the national averages. Well, we all know Trump won that one on the Electoral College. He did lose the popular vote, but by only about 2%. So between this point and Election Day, the gap narrowed, okay, by a couple percentage points. In 2020, I'm going to flip my tab here. Biden was ahead by 8 points about this time, a massive lead in the national polls. The final result was a lot closer. It was 4.5% difference on the popular vote. And obviously we know Biden had more, won the Electoral College there as well. So, but the point is it narrowed significantly in both times. Now, Nate Silver, the one I just mentioned, he attributed this not to the shy Trump voter. He doesn't know that that's a thing necessarily. He says it's just some flaw in the polling that they don't get enough Trump supporters in their data. And it's happened 2 times now. So if that trend holds, guys, right now it's within the margin of error, and Harris on some of the national averages is up by like a point. So that's why we're potentially seeing some of this panic now, because if the trend holds from the last 2 elections, well, that shrinking will actually give a lead to Donald Trump. What's your guys' response on the numbers here, the latest that we're seeing in the polls? Well, John, you can go ahead.
Well, one of the polls I'll look at is Quinnipiac, which is coming out with new numbers every week. And last week they had Trump ahead by 2% nationally. This week Harris is ahead by 3%. Now that, I guarantee you, the American populace did not shift 6% in the span of a week. I think it has to do with your modeling and who you happen to be canvassing, whether you're canvassing more Democrats or more Republicans in this particular sample that you're looking at. And that's what I think, even in the races you're talking about there, I'm not so sure that the gap narrowed as much as it was just not counting the numbers correctly.
Right, 100%.
And so yeah. And then look back to the midterms, right? Everyone was expecting a red wave. And in the midterm elections, we saw that it was not nearly a red wave. Democrats did far better than everyone expected. So in 2022, the polling undersold Democratic support for their candidates. And of course, the Dobbs decision had a lot to do with that. I saw something on CNN this morning. They noted that, and just looking at battleground states in these last two presidential elections, in 2016, 83% of the battleground states undersold Trump's support. And then in 2020, all of them did. All of the battleground state polling undersold Donald Trump's support in those battleground states. So in the battleground states right now, in virtually every poll that you look at, everything's within inside 2%. Like there are very few polls that have, even in Georgia, that have Trump ahead by more than 2. Those are the outliers. And so, of course, those are all within the margin of error. But if history is our teacher, it does tell you that these polls undersell Donald Trump by about 3 points. And David, you've made that point before on a national level. The same holds true with the battleground states. So again, we just have to kind of see, does it mirror 2016, 2020? Is the 2022 situation going to happen on a state level where maybe the Democrats are not being counted as heavily? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. But that's why the polls are so tricky to read right now.
Yeah, here's the thing. So the reason Trump voters are undersampled overall is because they typically don't respond to the pollsters. They don't trust the pollsters. So you're not going to get them responding as much as others. That's one part. But let me point you to Michigan and a poll that was just done out there by a respected pollster. They asked a very interesting question. They asked people, who are your friends and family? Not family, excuse me, friends and neighbors. Who are your friends and neighbors voting for? And by an overwhelming 10%, 56 to 46%, they said Donald Trump. Now that gives you a sense a little bit about folks that may not show up in the polls, but if the friends and neighbors that you know, that you hear in those conversations are voting Trump, that's not good for Democrats. You know what also isn't good for Democrats? We really haven't talked about early voting. These numbers have been horrible. And you guys know that. These numbers have been absolutely horrible. Democrats normally have a big advantage in early voting. Instead, the Republicans have to cut that advantage I'll have to get the latest figures.
Well, I'll just say anecdotally, David, before you go on. I mean, I have seen more people just in my own, feeds on different social media friends and whatnot that are on the conservative side that are voting earlier. And I did not see that personally before in 2020 from the conservative side of things. Liberal friends, yes. Conservative friends, no. But that's different this time around, at least so that's my little anecdotal sample size. Well, I'm not sure what everyone else is seeing out there, but I'm seeing that.
Let me give you one other interesting statistic, because I don't really care so much about the national, vote 5%. It's who's up 5, 3, 4. Who cares? What I care about specifically is the crosstabs. And here's the key crosstab that I'm seeing in every single poll. Donald Trump is leading by men in the male group, if you will, by 16, 17 points. Guys, in 2016, when he won the presidency, he won the male vote, I guess the male vote, that's how you call it, the male vote by 11 points. In 2020, when he lost, it was even. And now he's up by 17 points. Look, this is feeling not only just like 2016, this is feeling even better than 2016 at this point. Because once again, I'm going into the crosstabs. And to be clear, polls can be wrong, but not every single poll. And every single poll is suggesting trends. I'm not looking at the national number at all. And I'm talking about national or battleground overall numbers. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking inside the crosstabs, and every single crosstab is showing very good signs for Donald Trump. Now, having said that, the good news for Kamala Harris is she's doing much better than Biden did with college-educated white people in the suburbs. If that comes true, and she does even better than she's doing now, and she's doing much better than Biden, that's the abortion issue mostly, very much so, then we may have a race on our hands. Now, we're going to watch that number on election night. If that number is through the roof, then we have a different conversation. But at this point, every other trend is going in Donald Trump's favor.
All right, quick reaction on conservative pundit Eric Erickson. We're talking about all these numbers. He's citing all similar numbers and saying when he saw Harris was going to, and I'm forgetting the states off the top of my head. It might have been Texas.
Texas was one of them. Yeah.
So she was going to these states that clearly she's not going to win in the election, and so he was saying, is this an indication? He used some strong language. He said she was giving up on and just going to shore up Congress. I can't imagine that. I mean, there's no reason to. You're this far into this thing. Why would you wave the white flag before the thing's already over? But is that just kind of a misread of the situation, or is there real panic as far as, or I guess doom and gloom inside the Harris campaign on those numbers?
Well, first of all, just real quick, I'll be brief on this. And he's wrong. He's wrong. This just in, Eric Erickson's wrong. I know he's supposed to be this conservative guy that everybody follows. Sorry, he's wrong. And here's why he's wrong. Because the Texas event is a huge event for her as it relates to folks that have been affected on the Roe v. Wade issue. That's why she's going to Texas, because that's been kind of a ground zero state. There have been many states, but that's one of them. And she's going to grab all of these folks that have been affected by Roe v. Wade, and Texas is the linchpin in all of that. And so they're hoping that that's going to make national news across the country. So you don't have to be specifically in a battleground state to do that. So I think that's good campaigning. And quite frankly, and I'll have to check her schedule, I don't think Texas is the only state she's going to be in on that one day. I think she's going to other states, number one. Number two, I believe one of the states was Kentucky. I believe that's a fundraiser, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check that. So that's a fundraiser. But look, no, he's wrong on that. There were more things I have to say, but I'm getting old, so I can't remember. So, John,
it's all good. We can move on from that, unless, John, you got something to add to it.
No, not really. I mean, I think it would be foolish at this point in the game for her to give up on anything. I mean, it's still, like you said, what is it, 11 days, but until the election, and stuff is still coming out, stuff is still happening. Whether it moves the needle. I mean, you had the General Kelly comments to the New York Times and the Atlantic this week that we haven't seen new polling since that came out. Does that move the needle? I don't know if it will or not. There are still things that have happened late in campaigns that can affect things one way or the other. James Comey in 2016, late. So it would be foolish if she were to throw in the towel on certain states so that she could try and win some congressional races in Texas and Kentucky.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Moving on. Let's take a look at something I want to kind of maybe preview now. Get this thing on record before the election happens, in case this happens, because this is something. This is a Dan prediction right here. Okay.
Wow. Ooh, spicy. Yeah, lay the take on us, Dan.
All right, here we go. I know. And I want to get it on record because I know it's coming, because they kind of did it before, and I have a feeling it's going to really ramp up this time. If Donald Trump does win in a week and a half here, and he becomes president again, and if the popular vote is either close or Harris wins the popular vote, and Trump wins because our system is electoral college, not popular vote, I am predicting that you will see not just a couple of complaints like we've seen in the past about the electoral college, like we saw in 2016 after Hillary won the popular vote and Trump won the electoral college. There was a few, hey, maybe we should. I think you're going to see a full-blown, actual concerted effort to try and get that overturned and removed. Now, I don't know that that's possible, but I think you're going to see a massive effort anyway.
You have to change the Constitution.
Right.
I mean, it would take a constitutional amendment, which means you need ratification from 3/4 of the states. So this Dan, ain't going to happen. Now, I agree.
It's not going to, hold on real quick. It's not going to, I'm not going to say they're going to be able to flip a switch and do it, but particularly progressive activists have shown that they are willing to commit to the long game. So they might not be thinking, oh, we're going to get this overturned here even by the next election. But I think you will see a more serious effort that will be a sustained effort to try to get that overturned. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
I think we should roll on this piece of tape because I think you're right.
All right, good. So when the official Stop the Electoral College PAC is formed, and Soros or somebody puts $1 billion into it, we'll go ahead and roll back this tape. I appreciate that. Anyway, John, your chance to respond to that.
No, I think you're right. And, I think one of the things that Kamala Harris was asked about at the town hall was the Supreme Court justices, whether to make that number 12 now. So, I mean, I think it feels like everything is on the table with everything. Nothing is off the table with anything. It's certainly, you're right. These long-standing traditions and the ways that our government has functioned and elections have functioned for centuries now is not going to go away overnight. But I think certainly, with Roe v. Wade getting overturned, I think Democrats and Republicans now see that if you start a process, it may take generations, but maybe change happens that way. So I think you're right, Dan. I think there's going to be a hue and cry. Whether it has sustained momentum, who knows? But I mean, it's certainly with Democrats who control California, New York, and those big populous states, they're gonna want that overturned until the United States population shifts, and then
right, and then they'll get it, and then maybe the shift happens, and they're like, wait a minute, we were just kidding. Let's go back to the electoral.
Yeah. Can I also? Yeah, that's a good point. Can I just say, can we talk about principle here for a second? Yeah. I mean, the Democrats have been winning the popular vote for a long time now. And we've heard rumblings that, maybe we change the electoral college, but there really hasn't been this concerted effort. So now all of a sudden there's going to be a concerted effort because Donald Trump got a second term. So once again, we're back to Trump is in essence, the prism that they see all of this through. Well, even if that were the case, Donald Trump is leaving the national scene anyhow after 4 years. So as they like to say in Washington, it goes back to regular order to a degree. So, I don't know. I think the whole thing's kind of stupid, and it doesn't make any sense as it relates to your moral clarity on the issue. Your moral clarity has to do with Donald Trump. You can't stand the guy. You want to change the electoral college. Well, he won. I mean, if he wins, he would have won. So what are you fighting for exactly? I mean, it's all because of Trump is that we're even having Dan, if your prediction comes true, it's all because Trump has gotten them so frustrated and off their game that now they want to have a constitutional amendment because of it. Because they've been winning the popular vote for a long time, and we've never gotten to a new stage of this. So, I don't know.
All right. Well, that was just my 2 cents on that. We'll see what happens. I appreciate you guys entertaining that thought experiment there. But gentlemen, I appreciate it. We'll leave it there for this edition of the campaign catch-up, and we'll do it again next week. We'll probably do a couple extra ones next week since it's the last full week before the election. Hey, I know. Although, yeah, I mean, maybe it won't be called campaign catch-up, but I feel like it's not going. I mean, given how close it is, John, you and I talked about this last time. I would imagine that you're going to see these challenges if they're within the margin of error on the vote counts, and so it might take a few days. So. Well, we'll certainly be around to cover all that as well, but yeah, go ahead.
You're telling me I've got to have a GoPro literally stuck to my forehead.
Yeah.
Is what you're telling
me. Yes,
no sleep.
Exactly. So when we try to go to our families and our kids' sporting events and things, we just that way we can just turn it on and we can do the segment and then we can keep going on with our lives.
Sorry, honey. Man. Sorry, honey. I'm on with Dan Andros, so I can't come to dinner right now.
Families are gonna love that, Dan. Good stuff.
Yeah, Dad, did you see my goal? Nope. I was talking to John and Dan. Yeah. So
no, we were doing campaign catch-up. Sorry, I missed your bar mitzvah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you going through all the events of the day in the campaign, and we'll do it again next time. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Dan.